In today's 5-minute definitions for teachers in a hurry, a term that is as simple to understand as it's difficult to comprehensively define and apply. KACHRU'S Circles. We have shown in this channel that language use, language teaching and language learning are three different things, but that they're also closely connected in many interesting and intricate ways. One influences the other, depending on one important parameter: context. Context is precisely what the famous Kachru'S circles are meant to clarify, with particular regard to using, teaching and learning English. They do so by trying to analyze, in a very simple way really, the enormous complexity of using, learning and teaching English around the world in, well, different contexts. The famous Kachru Circles were originally presented in 1985 by the linguist Quirk H. Their conception is very simple to understand. Picture three concentric circles. Each of these three circles represents one of the three broad contexts of using English around the world. The smaller circle in the middle, called the inner circle, represents countries that English is typically and historically associated with as a standard language: the United Kingdom, the United States of America, Canada, Australia and New Zealand. These are the places where the main bulk of the native speakers of English live and where English plays a historical, legal and educational role. So the inner circle typically is the place where English comes from, its historical birthplace, as it were. It's the smallest of all circles because it has the smaller number of users, about 500 million. Zooming out from the inner circle, we meet the second of the three circles, called the outer circle. This circle represents all those places around the world that have a historical connection with the English language, mainly as a result of colonization by inner circle countries, mainly by the British, but also others, the US for example. These are countries in Asia, such as India, Pakistan, Singapore or Malaysia, and in Africa, such as Ghana, Nigeria or Kenya, but also in other territories around the world. In outer circle countries, English is recognized as one of the official languages, which means that it plays an official role in the educational and legal system of these countries. Outer circle speakers are understandably more numerous than inner circle speakers. They amount to about 1.2 or 0.3 billion. Finally, the bigger circle of the three concentric circles is called the expanding circle. It essentially includes the rest of the world where English has spread as a so-called foreign language, countries in all continents and users of all proficiency levels who learn and use English. There are non-native speakers of English in countries like China, Russia, Brazil, Argentina, the European Union. We're talking about perhaps more than 2 billion people here. So what happens in these circles in terms of teaching? Well, the inner circle is where English is taught as a so-called native language or mother tongue. They provide the norm for English language teaching and are therefore known as being norm providing. In the outer circle, English has the status of a second language, ESL, and its extensive use and legal status makes them norm-developing contexts. And in the expanding circle, we have our familiar English as a foreign language or EFL situations. It is interesting to note that in terms of English language teaching curricula, the further we move from the core of the three circles, the more we are influenced or impacted by it. That is why expanding circle contexts are known as norm-dependent contexts. In other words, the curriculum of most EFL contexts in the expanding circle are heavily impacted by the linguistic descriptions of the inner circle or native speaker countries, most typically the UK and the USA. While Kachru circles have been used extensively over the past few decades to describe the spread of English around the world, they are not without problems. One such problem has to do with the fact that in the age of globalization, people move, which means that typical representatives of the inner circle, native speakers of English, can form communities in, say, expanding circle contexts, like, for example, in Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates. Also, non-native users who would be typically considered geographically residents of the expanding circle use English so extensively through their work or online that they would be considered ESL speakers. Add to that the fact that the three circles offer no information on the type of English used. The inner circle does not represent one variety of English. Similarly with the outer circle, of course. The three circles model oversimplify things in a very flattening way too. And some of the most diverse EFL contexts can be found in inner circle countries, like, for example, students learning English in summer schools in the UK. This means that Kachru circles are a simple tool for a very complicated task. We can use them as our starting point, but we need to go deeper if we want to understand the complexity surrounding the use, teaching and learning of English in the world today. Let me know in the comments what other terms you'd like me to define in 5 minutes. As always, I look forward to communicating with you. Bye for now.